If you're enjoying these forgotten cases, please like the video and subscribe. It really helps this channel grow. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what's the weather like there right now? Sussex County, New Jersey, in the winter of 1811 was a landscape of farm roads, timbered hills, and isolated houses where family disputes could remain hidden from neighbors for months. In one farmhouse lived Cornelius Cole, his wife Mary, their 2 young children, and Mary's widowed mother, Agnes Thewers. The household was tied together not only by blood, but by property. Cornelius had acquired the farm from Agnes under an agreement requiring him to pay her an annuity of $50 each year for the rest of her life. This is the case remembered as the Confession of Mary Cole. The familiar title comes from a pamphlet printed around 1813, but the crime occurred in December 1811, and Mary was tried and executed in 1812. What survives is not a complete transcript. It is a mixture of newspaper notices, a trial pamphlet assembled by John W. Kern, and a later confession narrative whose publisher apparently had no direct knowledge of the proceedings. The sources do not reliably preserve Cornelius's occupation or Agnes's age. They do preserve the structure of the conflict. Agnes had transferred her property while retaining a guaranteed income and a place in the household. Mary later claimed that her mother interfered in the marriage, treated her harshly, and refused to sleep in a separate bed, instead insisting on sharing the bed used by Mary and Cornelius. Those accusations came from Mary and from publications produced after the crime. They cannot be independently confirmed, but they became central to the defense because the law would ask whether Mary had acted with prior malice or in a sudden response to an attack. Mary's later account pushed the conflict back into childhood. She described her father as gentle and religious, and Agnes as domineering and neglectful. She claimed her mother had refused to nurse her as an infant, that her father fed her with a small device known as a sugar teat, and that she spent part of her early childhood with her grandmother. After her father died, Mary said she married Cornelius partly to escape her mother's authority. Yet Agnes eventually lived under the same roof. By 1811, Mary was a young wife and mother, probably about 22 years old. Her household contained 3 adults whose financial and domestic rights overlapped, offering little privacy and no simple separation. On the night of December 15th, the arrangement became fatal. According to Mary's confession, visitors stayed at the farmhouse until nearly midnight. After they left, Cornelius went to bed. Mary and Agnes remained awake, and a dispute began in the same room where he was sleeping. Mary claimed that her mother threatened her with a knife. She said she became frightened and enraged, seized an axe, and struck Agnes on the head. The blow fractured the skull and brought Agnes to the floor. Mary then used a jackknife to cut her mother's throat. The surviving descriptions are brief but consistent on the essential injuries: a severe cranial fracture and a deep wound across the neck. Mary awakened Cornelius and told him what had happened. By the following morning, he had lifted boards in the kitchen floor and dug a shallow hole beneath them. Agnes's body was placed inside and covered with ashes and swingle tow, the coarse flax fibre produced during processing. The boards were then returned to position. The couple created an explanation for Agnes's absence. Neighbors were told that she had become offended, packed her belongings, and gone to stay with her brother in Bergen County. The story worked. Agnes had relatives elsewhere, and there was no local police force tracing the movements of an adult woman. In March 1812, Mary and Cornelius left Sussex County and moved east to live near members of his family. They rented the farm to a man named Henry Crandallmeyer. Their departure placed another household directly above the concealed grave. With warmer weather came the first physical sign that the Bergen County story was false. During a gathering at the farmhouse, one account describes it as a funeral, an offensive odor spread through the building. Crandallmeyer searched for its source and began removing part of the kitchen floor. Beneath the boards, in a hole about 2 feet deep, he found the remains of a woman covered with ashes and flax waste. Neighbors assembled in the kitchen and identified the dead woman as Agnes Thewers. The discovery narrowed the investigation immediately. Agnes had not left voluntarily. Her body had been concealed inside property occupied by her daughter and son-in-law. The injuries indicated deliberate violence, while the replaced boards, covering material, and false account of her departure showed an organized effort to hide the death. A coroner's jury returned a finding of willful murder committed by Cole and his wife. Warrants were issued. Mary and Cornelius were arrested in Bergen County and brought before Judge William Sanford Pennington in Newark, who ordered them jailed for trial in Sussex County. There was no long search through competing suspects. The evidence pointed directly to the household. The question was which member of the couple had killed Agnes, and whether the act had been planned. Before trial, Mary confessed to carrying out the attack. Cornelius denied participating in the killing but admitted helping conceal the body. Mary insisted that Agnes had approached her with a knife and that the violence occurred in fear and passion. The prosecution, however, had evidence suggesting preparation. In the earlier trial pamphlet, Mary was reported to have acknowledged that she and Cornelius had discussed getting rid of Agnes and that a hole had been prepared beneath the kitchen floor. If accepted, that admission seriously weakened the claim of a wholly spontaneous act of self-defense. Mary and Cornelius were tried before the Sussex County Court of Oyer and Terminer, with Judge Pennington presiding. Such courts handled serious criminal cases, including capital felonies. Contemporary accounts reported multiple witnesses and separate arguments concerning each defendant's responsibility. Mary's defense did not deny that she had caused Agnes's death. Counsel instead tried to reduce the offence from murder to manslaughter. They argued that Agnes's alleged attack had produced what they called an intoxication of passion, a sudden emotional state in which reason had no time to regain control. Earlier cases involving provocation were cited to support the argument. The defense also presented the history of the mother-daughter relationship. Agnes was accused of years of neglect, domination, and interference. Mary claimed her mother had thrown bellows toward her while she held her children, questioned the children's paternity, disrupted the marriage, and finally advanced with a knife. This portrait served a legal purpose. It made the final quarrel appear to be the culmination of sustained provocation rather than an isolated dispute. But nearly all of that history came through Mary or through narratives sympathetic to her. Agnes could not answer it. More importantly, the alleged earlier discussion of murder and the prepared hiding place worked against the argument that the killing began and ended before reason could return. The jury convicted Mary of murder. Cornelius was acquitted of participating in the killing, but convicted of concealing it. He received a fine of $250 and 2 years in the New Jersey State Prison. The difference between their outcomes was stark. Mary faced death for the act she admitted. Cornelius, who concealed the body, replaced the floor, supported the false story, and left the county with her, received imprisonment. Legally, the verdicts reflected different conduct and different proof. Socially, Mary was tried in a system where women could not serve as judges, attorneys, clerks, or jurors. She was not judged by a jury containing any members of her own sex. The defense asked the jury to see a wife and mother driven beyond endurance. The prosecution asked them to see preparation in the hidden grave and the coordinated deception. Sympathy could explain the household conflict. It could not erase evidence the state treated as proof of malice. Mary Cole was hanged at Newton on June 26, 1812. She was about 23 years old. In her final statement, she continued to say that she did not deserve death. She maintained that her mother had come at her with a knife, that fear and anger had overcome her judgment, and she warned others not to allow passion to govern their actions. "It is a hard thing for me to die," she reportedly said, "but I must." Mary also left a farewell message for Cornelius concerning their child. She asked him to remain with the child, to act as both father and mother, and to keep a lock of her hair. It is one of the few surviving moments in which Mary appears outside the legal argument, not as an abstract example of matricide, but as a condemned parent addressing the husband who would outlive her. Her execution did not end the case's public life. The proceedings were quickly turned into crime literature. A genuine sketch of the trial of Mary Cole appeared close to the events and summarized 11 witness statements, the prosecution and defense arguments, Mary's letter, her final speech, and the execution. A second publication, The Confession of Mary Cole, followed under a date often given as 1813. It was more sensational, less orderly, and less reliable in its details. That difference is the case's lasting complication. Mary confessed to killing Agnes. Cornelius admitted concealing the death. The body beneath the floor, the injuries, the false story, and the couple's departure leave little doubt about the basic sequence. What remains uncertain is the framing supplied by the pamphlets. whether Agnes truly attacked with a knife, how far in advance the killing was discussed, and how much of Mary's life story was faithfully recorded rather than shaped into a cautionary narrative. The case is solved in the legal sense. Mary Cole was convicted, and responsibility for Agnes Thurs's death was formally established. But the surviving record is not neutral. It was produced by lawyers, printers, moral commentators, and an anonymous recorder who claimed to preserve Mary's confession. Their accounts turned a cramped household, a financial agreement, and a violent family rupture into a public lesson about passion, motherhood, and obedience. More than 2 centuries later, the most reliable conclusion is also the most restrained. Agnes Thewers disappeared in December 1811. Her daughter and son-in-law said she had gone away. Months later, another family lifted the kitchen floor and found the truth beneath it. Everything that followed, the confession, the defense, the verdict, and the pamphlets, was an attempt to explain how a family had continued living above a grave,